Hello and welcome to this episode of Akrinos Access. I'm Eric Matei, joined by someone that many of you may have come to know as the guy in the blue shirt, that being the one and only Mr. Bruce Carnohan. We're going to have a really great conversation here on this episode of Akrinos Access because this is all about process optimization. And Bruce is going to present, we'll say, a new lens for your modern optometry practice. Bruce, man, thank you so much for joining us here on Akrinos Access.
Well, I was grooving away in the background, that music is pretty catchy, Eric. So I love it. It's almost as good as your, original material. So thank you. I love it.
Fantastic. Well, Bruce, hey, look, again, thank you so much for joining us here on Akrinos Access. I know we've got a lot of things to jump into, so let's just take it from the top, right? Sure. And it starts with this. It starts with, and as you know, our audience, we work with optometrists across North America at all phases of the practice life cycle. So let's start here. What is the role of process in the modern optometry practice?
Yeah, that's a great question. Of course, like you said, across the life cycle, first of all, it's like if I'm sitting in the chair and the doctor's looking in my eyes, he's going to take a different lens for each unique patient, right? So first of all, you have to accommodate the uniqueness of the practice. You have to accommodate the uniqueness of the size. And I'm leading to the fact that, what that leads to is I found in all my decades of doing this across multiple administration, nonprofit, state agencies, what I've always found to be true is you always get what you design. And so if your process, whether it's a mature practice, a new one, halfway through a cold start, if you're getting unacceptable results or undesirable outcomes, that might be more of a doctor's terminology, then there's something wrong with the design of the process. It's not the people. And people will very often quickly point the finger back at, oh, well, it was technician Lisa, or, that Eric dude that can't,
Sure.
So that's the natural tendency. People tend to point personally back at the people, but they don't realize that the design and the process will always get you what you designed into it.
Wow. And I tell you what, and I think that's also, as we were chatting a little bit before hitting record here, we were talking about that in this episode, and to our viewers and audience out there, whether you're viewing this, whether you're listening to this on your drive home, what have you, we're really going to challenge you to take a step out of your comfort zone and look at things objectively, right? Because to Bruce's point, I think Bruce kind of kicking it off with that we really need to realize that, look, if things aren't happening the way we like, we really need to assess process. And I think you're alluding to, not that you overlook the role of people, because you could have great process and your people aren't executing, but then I think more often than not, it is these, at least we're discovering here in modern eye care, it's a lot of these processes are actually kind of outdated. So now let's dig a little deeper, and let's talk about how does process impact the practice.
Right.
First and foremost, as it pertains to the patient journey. So in the shoes of the patient, what do these processes mean to the practice?
Right. And so the process will always mimic itself either as kind of good behavior or good things that the patient likes. And I'll give you kudos for that very often. The process will also mimic not so good things, which the patient may or may not tell you, because what I found is, and I've gotten a lot bolder when I sit in the optometry chair, particularly since meeting Dr. Christine Nguyen, I'm pretty bold as a patient. I will help the doctor guide her execution of what she does in her process towards my needs. Now, some patients may be a little bit more timid than I am, or they might be in a culture that, they don't dare challenge the doctor, right? So it's very interesting. Sometimes the processes that are creating what I call discombobulation or honked up often are not talked about by the patient, and also the processes that are that way are very often not talked about by the staff and the support team. So it's extremely interesting. You've got to be really attuned to, is this outcome I'm seeing, which we all agree we don't like, or we may have just heard about it suddenly from a patient and we weren't aware of it. Is it coming from the process? If it is coming from the process, where's the root of the problem? And then let's not ignore it.
Sure.
Let's
Yeah.
pretend,
Yeah.
oh, well, that's just, that guy, Bruce, he's an unusual patient. He's, he's a little bit, bolder than, so it can't be an issue. So when you do get that feedback, whether it's from staff about the process or the doctor themselves, or particularly the patient, right? It's all about having processes that are patient centric so that you make sure the patient wants to come back. I mean, you don't want to push the patient away with discombobulated scheduling.
Sure.
You show
Yes.
up, they don't know
Yes.
who you are. You get to the room, they've got the wrong records in front of them. You get in the chair and the doctor's saying, "What are you here for?"
Yes. Yes. Yes.
all of those
It's
all those things that we've experienced, right? And we think, oh, well, that's
sure.
normal. Well, you know what? That's not normal. Today, with people's preciousness of their time, when you're sitting in the chair, the patient should know how they got there, and the patient should have a right to know that the doctor knows why they're there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It fascinating. You're bringing that up on the front of patient journey because
Right.
I think, well, for instance, something that comes in very, very, very common, right, is a
Yeah.
practice looks at their business. They're not achieving the results they want. They look at their
Right.
practice. They look at the analytics. They like to look at conversions, which, by the way, some people like to call this capture rate. Bruce, I am on a mission. Bruce, join me on this mission to remove capture from our
Oh,
terminology. That's such a
yeah.
negative connotation that we're capturing people. No, we're converting people. We're converting patients who have a willingness to purchase our wares from the practice. But that
Right.
being said, I think oftentimes when doctors look at their conversion metrics
Mm-hmm.
and don't see that they're hitting it, I think all too often they're quick to think, well, you mentioned the team, right? So maybe they're
Right.
thinking, oh, well, my people aren't saying the right thing. But also they're so quick to perhaps want to say, oh, we got to those offerings aren't selling, so we need to ditch those and get new offerings, or we need to update our website, or we need to throw a ton of money at digital marketing. And there is a role and a place for digital marketing, but I think in the context of this, and I suppose the takeaway for our viewers out there is that
Mm-hmm.
if you're seeing aspects of the patient journey that are not converting, explore process just as much as you do explore team engagement and some of these other things. So now let's shift gears and talk about process as it pertains to. Are you ready for this? And I know this is a big can of worms, Bruce, but that is practice economics, right?
Okay.
That
Well,
that that is practice economics and profitability. Please do chime.
can I do a go back? Because I also want to
Absolutely,
give you. So I'm a no box thinker, which means I think limitless possibilities, right?
love it.
Forget about
Yes,
out of the box. That's so out of date. It's unbelievable. So I'm a no box thinker. So what I'd suggest to you, instead of even anything to do with capture or conversion, what about a collaboration index?
ooh,
How well did we
ooh,
collaborate throughout the whole process with the patient, with the techs, amongst the doctors? So think of it as a collaboration index, right? Because if you think of it that way, you've got a total holistic view, good, bad, or indifferent, of what the practice is doing. And here's the golden question, right? The collaboration index can be cemented by either the technician or the front desk or the desk doctor asking this one question: what could have we done differently or better to make your stay with us more enjoyable or more educational, or whatever the question needs to be? And there are very, very few optometrists that will ever ask that question. If they would, that's all your social media advertising,
sure.
patient experience, it all can be grabbed in that, the listening to the answers, that one key question.
That is Fascinating. And I think in the context of that,
That's your productivity. It leads right to your
that's it.
productivity,
Absolutely.
right? Yeah.
And what you mentioned about the collaborative index,
Yes.
that's really fascinating because it absolutely does. And so if I'm understanding you, and for our viewers who may be kind of, or our audience who may be kind of like, what exactly is he referring to? Bruce, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking that this is like, okay, let's look at that. What's a simple metric we can use to
Right.
measure collaborative index? Presumably it's revenue per patient, right? Just like that per patient spend, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that is telling us, that is the market's way of telling us that we're doing great things, right? Like if they're willing
Right.
to spend more on the elective procedures, the advanced diagnostics, the offerings out of the optical and what have you, leverage that as the index. And I suppose that then answers that question we were talking about with regard to
Productivity.
process and productivity and process productivity and practice economics, because you're gonna be able to see it
Right.
reflected right there in the financials.
Right. And
Fascinating stuff.
part of that collaborative index also could be, people don't do a good job of really figuring out how did the time go, right? And what I
Mm,
mean by that is, first of all, was the patient on time? Yes or no? Simple to measure. Did we enter the pre-exam room on time? Yes or no? Very simple to answer. Did the practicing optometrist or other specialists, it might be that the technician has to take pictures, might be somebody has to be did we do all of those patient journey things that are critical to a great eye exam? Did we start on time? Because
yeah.
here's the deal, I found 50 years worth of work. If you don't start on time, you will never finish on time. Never. And people, people always look at, oh, well, I had to ask the staff to stay 20 minutes longer a day because we had to push in this emergency, blah, 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 blah. But that's all process indications
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you might not have started on time with the things that you could have started on time. And hence now the staff are working 20 minutes longer. And the poor optometrist, doctor's probably working an hour longer because they have to tie up all
Sure.
the loose ends with record keeping. So the collaborative index is around not only it's time based and it's dollars and productivity based.
Love it. Absolutely love it. So okay, so let's dig a little deeper now
Yeah.
and look at this from the cross section. And by the way, for those of you all that may be just tuning in, hanging out here, Akrinos Access with my good friend, Mr. Bruce Carnohan. He is the the guy in the blue shirt. Definitely, you got to follow him. You have got to connect
Yeah.
with Bruce in
Come see
LinkedIn.
me.
Absolutely. But we're talking here about process optimization, and Bruce is offering up this new lens for modern optometry practices, looking at the role of process from
Mm-hmm.
the patient journey perspective, from the team's perspective as it pertains to operations and workflows, and absolutely how that impacts the bottom line. So, Bruce, I'd now like to take the conversation around um, let's consider process at the different stages of practice lifecycle. And really primarily the two key stages I'd like to do. One is being cold start, so or a new
Yeah.
practice owner. So whether that's someone who's, as you know, we work with a lot of doctors cold starting and purchasing
Yeah.
practices. So let's look at it from their lens. And then after
Mm-hmm.
that, let's look at the lens from the other cohort we do a lot of work with. And that is doctors who want to get to the next level in their practice through
Right.
modernizing their practice. So let's start with the new practice owner. What's some pearls you've got for them as far as setting up those processes? And by the way, we've only got a few minutes to answer this question because
Okay.
I know
All
we could
right.
probably talk like 8 hours on this.
We could.
Uh,
All right. So unique opportunity in the manufacturing world, they call it greenfield. So
Greenfield,
it
love it.
is the one and only time that you can set up all of your steps in your process to not only be synchronized, but minimize the wasted activities between all the steps. And that can also mean how do you actually set up the flow of the patient physically through the office environment? Right from the way they come into the door to checking in to pre-exam, you've got an ideal opportunity to set up what I call a flow line. If you can flow the patient and all the support activities in a very simple, non-wasted activity, which literally means the amount of footsteps even that the patient and all the staff are taking, you have the absolute golden opportunity to make it super effective right from the get-go. And be aware that people have a power zone. They've got to operate in a power zone. Don't put all your essential items on the bottom shelf of the bookcase in every exam room. Have them right there, and it can be that simple. But when you're starting new, there's limitless possibilities. You don't have to care about, well, I might upset Edna or I might upset Bruce if I change their workflow around a little bit. You don't have that to start off with. So set it up patient centric, step by step, get rid of all the wasted activities. And I gave you an example in a state agency. I did one where a grant file traveled 6 miles in the agency and we got it down to 150 yards. What a massive improvement. So don't say,
I mean,
don't,
so what's it called? What's that term you got for cold start new owners? Green what?
greenfield. So
Greenfield,
it's
yeah.
like building a hut or a house or a yurt or whatever it is. Imagine you got the greenfield and you can design it exactly the way you want it to be. And you can design everything that happens inside of your yurt or office or hut, whatever building. You can design the patient experience to flow very naturally so that they get enjoyment in being there and not feel hustled, lost, confused. I mean, how many doctor's offices you've been into? They take you from room to room to room. You get turned around 3 or 4 times. It's like, and I often have to say, what's the way out? So if I have to ask the way
Yeah,
out, I know
right.
I'm turned around, right? So
Sure.
those are
Oh man.
indications. How many people are asking you, well, where's the way out? That's an indication
Mm.
that your flow for the patient experience is discombobulated.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Wow. So the
all right,
green field. So new practice owners, you got this green field. Okay. So now let's fast forward.
the other
And
end.
Bruce, yeah. We find a lot of doctors that are in this. They hit about I'm 10 years in, and then
Right,
another one I hit 20 years in. Those seem to be the two big.
right.
The too big when folks are coming to us because they're seeing, yeah, like now's the time for me to put a plan in place for my
Right.
next phase of growth. So, but what do you see from a process standpoint? It's one thing if it's a green field and you're writing the script,
Yes.
okay, but it's another thing if like this is your team and this is how we've always done it, Doc. So shed some light on how we tackle that. And I know this is a really loaded question. I get it.
So here's the deal with we've always done it this way. That's complacency, number one. People feel comfortable in complacency, that's okay. But number two, and even more importantly, you've got to take the lens of I need to figure out how to do more with either the same resource or less.
Sure.
And if you start there and start asking yourself, okay, is all of this work I'm doing enhancing the patient experience or not? Yes or no? And a mature practice, there's a lot of things you can stop doing that won't either affect the safety of the patient, the integrity of the records, the integrity of the practice, or putting the staff at risk. And you can do a stop doing exercise. Super powerful. And it is like everyone, maybe it's just over break time or at the end of the day or start of the day. Okay, guys, come up with each individual come up with one thing we can stop doing right now, which is waste. Because once you get rid of all those stop doings, you end up having more time to do all the things that you're doing either in a rush or not well at all, which is stopping you from growing
Sure.
or preventing the retention rate of the patient wanting to come back. Because they may have had a great experience in this mature practice, but the billing process just frustrates them and think, oh, I'm not going back there again.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's fascinating you say that though, because it could be one little step in the process that they're
Yeah.
like, and I think
Yeah.
it's important to point out that it is. We need to think immediately. Folks want to immediately think it's people. They, my staff said the wrong thing or this or that. But
Right.
you're bringing up, man. This is really. Hey, I implore everyone who's viewing this to connect with Bruce in LinkedIn and see what he's up to and evaluate some of this stuff. Fascinating opportunity. So, Bruce, like I know we've been jumping into a whole lot of things regarding process
Good.
optimization for modern optometry practices, and I think while I know we have a slew more things we could jump into, I'd really like to jump into tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do and how you help people do this exact stuff in their practice.
Yeah, so actually what we've talked about is really my methodology. If it's a new place, then I'm going to help people do the absolute best upfront, flowable, repeatable process design they can come up with that minimizes the waste. If I'm in a mature office, administration, state agency, manufacturing plant, it doesn't matter. I'm going to be looking for opportunities of like, where is the waste? It's often mimicked in frustrating conversations or frustration with somebody in the process because they mimic the discombobulation of the process. I'm also going to figure out, what can I help the practice stop doing so that they can use their time more effectively on the things that they should be doing. And then two other exercises. I love these exercises, which is get the entire team to come up with practical ideas of how do you save $1 a day per person. And there's literally, it can be a fishbowl, it can be a jar, it can be a dartboard you stick things on, it can be anything, a post-it note. So everybody's empowered to come up with their what can I save $1 a day per person and what is it? And they all get reviewed. And the other one is, can I save a minute per day per person? Because that may seem trivial until you do the math, right? If
Sure.
there's
Yeah.
10 people in the practice, that's $10 and 10 minutes a day, 50 minutes a week, or it might be a 6-day practice, 60 minutes a week, 60
Yeah.
bucks. Once you start doing that multiple, and what's interesting, and that's what I do, I help people to realize that you have limitless possibilities in redesigning your process so that you always get what you design and you always have the people an integral part of that so that they don't get blamed for things that the process creates. So that's the other thing, blame-free environment, right? In a greenfield site, it's much easier to set up a blame-free environment because you can set up your management culture that way. In a mature business, unfortunately, it kind of slips into that very personal, more of a blaming environment. Like,
Yeah.
well, Eric, you gave me this bad file, and I went and put it in the computer, and the computer went and access the wrong patient file, whatever it is. There tends to be a lot more blame in a mature business. So
Sure.
removing the blame, and it's tough because it means sometimes that the owner of the business has to take a look in the mirror and say, okay, what am I doing that is actually making the process be all honked up or discombobulated? Or what am I saying to my people that's leading them to do the wrong things with the process?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And it's fascinating because then we're going from where process and leadership need to
Right.
come together, and that's where you then have like kind of you know that collaborative environment. Well, all these wonderful things,
Collaborative
Bruce. We're gonna have to
index.
have you. I was gonna, dude. That's it. What a full circle. Pulling it full circle with the collaborative index.
Yeah.
So, hey, this was awesome. How can folks get in touch with you, Bruce?
Thank you. So my primary platform is LinkedIn. I post daily, other than when I travel. All of my live streams, because I'm a live stream host like yourself, they end up actually under my live tab on my YouTube channel. And I'm pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. There aren't too many hashtag the guy in the blue shirts, or my method is hashtag simpler, faster, better. Or over my shoulder is my new virtual office and store where I've brought everything together. And as you know, I'm pretty certain you know that's in the Omniverse City. And I will be participating in the July 7th through 9 event actually as a speaker. I'm going to be covering some of these aspects of what I call the trilogy, which is doctor, patient, customer. How do you bring that trilogy all together so that everybody wins? It's not one of those sectors winning. Everybody has to win in the patient, doctor, customer trilogy for it to make sense. And that's how you're going to keep your clients. If you don't do those three things, you're not going to keep your clients.
That's
It's
it.
pretty
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah. I mean, truly, Bruce. Look, and that's where such a lovely way to pull it all back together, right? Because a modern independent optometry practice
Right.
is no different from, and no matter what stage you are, right? Even if you're a cold start, there was a
Right.
time when Steve Jobs was cold starting Apple, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And we wouldn't be to this point with these things if not for process.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and looking at the customer experience, what
Absolutely.
do we want the customer to experience? How do we want them to feel? And we definitely want them to come back, right? Unless we're crazy. I mean, we really want returning customers, right?
That is the idea. That is the
That's the
idea.
idea.
Well,
All right. Thank you,
Bruce,
Eric.
thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us here at Akrinos Access. To our viewers out there, definitely, if you have not yet connected with Bruce, you got to go find him in LinkedIn, see what he's up to. Bruce, thank you again for this fascinating, insightful conversation all around process optimization and providing modern ODs a new lens to really look at their practice and their practice processes. On behalf of our team here at Akrinos, thank you all for tuning in. If you want more great practice management insights like this, check it all out at
Yeah.
akrinos.com and be sure to follow us on the socials. Until next
Okay.
time.
Thank you, Eric.